I don't think people really appreciate the capacity of sleep to actually heal our mental health. If we did, we might take sleep a bit more seriously and put a bit more emphasis on getting good quality sleep.
Hello, I'm Dr Jodi Richardson, and you're listening to Well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. It's so lovely to have your company. Today's guest is Olivia Arezzolo. Olivia had a light bulb moment when she was 17 years old and hospitalised for bulimia and anorexia. It was a moment where she was missing out. She realised she was missing out on a special friend's 18th birthday, and this idea came to her head that if I don't get better, I'll miss out on everything, including life itself. And while Olivia has overcome major depression, disordered eating, and her own health challenges, she has her own health journey, as we all do, and I love that Olivia is so open about it. She's actually joining us today to talk about something that is a topic that every single one of us will benefit from more understanding and less struggle. So Olivia is here to talk to us about sleep. We know that there's a bi-directional nature when it comes to sleep, that not enough sleep can impact our anxiety, and our anxiety can absolutely impact our sleep. So Olivia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And exactly as you just mentioned, sleep and anxiety are bi-directional. So I know a lot of your listeners they may be sleeping okay, but, given, your podcast is called Well, Hello Anxiety, I'm guessing that anxiety is quite a common thread between your listeners, and it's really exciting to be able to, remedy anxiety from a different level. Don't think people really appreciate the capacity of sleep to actually heal our mental health. And if we did, we might take sleep a bit more seriously and put a bit more emphasis on getting good quality sleep, because we all know that none of us like to feel anxious or restless or, like you can't switch off your mind. But when you aren't sleeping enough, that is exactly the experience. Stress hormone cortisol has been found in clinical trials to increase by 37% after just one night of insufficient sleep. That's huge. That's a huge rise. And this could be the key reason why you feel anxious, you're irritable, your mind seems to just be a steam train out of control. So, I think it's exciting then to consider, okay, well, actually, if I take care of my sleep, I'm actually taking care of my anxiety as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad to be here and excited to share all of the tips and tricks with your audience.
Oh, thank you, Olivia. And I want to mention too, while you're listening, that Olivia is not only a sleep coach, she's a speaker, she's an author, she's a media commentator and an ambassador for Sealy Posturepedic and for IKEA. And Olivia is changing lives through her work because, as Olivia just mentioned, sleep is just such a pillar of our mental health and our physical health. And one of the things that you just mentioned was about taking sleep seriously. What does that actually look like?
Well, I feel like there's this notion that sleep really isn't that important and it's not a priority compared to, getting through your work day or saying yes to that social commitment. Taking sleep seriously means you recognize that I need to first, in my schedule, allocate sufficient time for me to sleep before I allocate time for other activities. Now, a lot of us love, to join that 5 a.m. club notion or, getting up before the sun rises. I'm personally one of them. But as a compromise to that, I don't plan a lot of late night events, because if I'm wanting to get up by 5 a.m., that would mean, and have 7.5 hours of sleep, that would mean that I would be going to bed at 9:30. Now, for me, that's actually not such an issue because I love getting up really early and I don't find TV interesting. My brain is not particularly alert after 8 p.m. I kind of dive straight down. That's very typical of my chronotype, which is a lion. But the thing is that I know that if I've told my clients in the past, okay, so if you want to be getting up really early, then you need to be going to bed, at 9:30. And they just look at me dumbfounded. They're like, but I've got other things to do. It's like, no, at the moment you're prioritizing those other things. That's your choice. You're saying in your head, it's more important for me to say yes to a dinner at 8 p.m. that means that you're going to get home at 10, then unwind and, jump into bed at 11. That's your choice. And that's what I mean by taking the sleep seriously. It's like if you take something seriously and you respect its value, then it's a priority. Just as if you have a deadline at work and you make that a priority to deliver. Sleep is the same. You have to prioritize it. And I feel like, when you learn the links, like we just mentioned about anxiety and, how it affects our mental health, then you're willing to take sleep a bit seriously.
And I think what we find too, those of us who struggle with anxiety or are on top of our anxiety even, we do find that it doesn't take much. And as you said about the cortisol rising 37% with one night of disrupted sleep, it's no wonder that it has an impact on how we feel the next day.
Definitely. Yes. I wanted to ask you, because you've got kids, how did it feel when you were sleeping when your kids were little and you were getting, the first year, for example, statistically, on average, new parents in the first 12 months will sleep 4.5 hours. I'm wondering, how did that feel for you, having experience with anxiety, having experience with, with sleeplessness? How did that feel?
There's barely an adjective that can help me describe what that experience was like for me. It was horrendous. And I remember the nurse when we first had our son 14 years ago saying to me, just remember, Jodi, 4 hours sleep a night is not enough. And I looked at her like, well, of course it's not. And so when I had disrupted sleep with him, I found that my mental health took a nosedive. I struggled with obsessive thoughts. I wrote about this in Anxious Mums. I struggled with obsessive thoughts about harming him, which what I spent a lot of time describing in the book and have spoken about on other podcasts is the idea that we can have these intrusive thoughts because the likelihood of experiencing OCD when you are in that postnatal period is extremely high. And it doesn't mean that you are actually going to act on the thoughts you're having. It's very distressing to have those unwanted thoughts. So that was very difficult. And so it was extraordinarily hard and my mood was low. I was very emotional, very teary, and I struggled a lot with my mental health. And the 4 hours sleep that you get is broken. You don't, some mums are lucky, but yeah, the 4 hours sleep I was getting and I was counting until my husband's, one of his colleagues at work said, Jodi, just don't count. It's just too hard when you're counting. You're putting too much pressure on yourself. Just stop counting. That actually did help. So very interesting that you put that question to me because I had a nap this afternoon. I know this is the second appointment that we had for this particular recording because I came down with COVID and I needed to postpone because I just needed to go to bed. And so, I knew the understanding would be there when I said, look, I'm so sorry I can't talk with you today because I'm really struggling to stay awake and I need to nap. And so sleep for me with with my mental health, when I sleep well, I am firing on all cylinders, but I know very quickly it doesn't take long. Like last night, for example, I was awake for 3 hours in the night because I woke and couldn't return to sleep. And that's why I replenished my sleep this afternoon with a nap before coming onto the podcast. So I've experienced the downside of sleep deprivation, and I imagine a lot of people listening have too. And one of the things that I've learned about recently, which is really insightful, and you mentioned before, is about my chronotype. And your book, Bear, Lion or Wolf, is something that people can read to learn more about their own. But tell us about chronotype and why it's so important to understand, each of our individual chronotype for our sleep scheduling.
So there are a few reasons, but the first one is when you use chronotype-specific sleep strategies, you will see faster results, better results in less time. And I know we all want that. So it basically puts you on the fast track to sleep success. The second reason is because what's right for one chronotype is not necessarily right for another chronotype. So unless you know your chronotype, then you could be using a strategy or a recommendation that is not fitted for you, and then you're going to be struggling to sleep. Like, for example, the concept that we all should be in bed by 10 o'clock. That's great for early birds, lions. I'm a lion, so they're the ones that like to rise and sleep earliest. Whereas the other, which is one class of chronotypes, but the other class of chronotypes, wolves, for example, wolves are typically late risers and late to bed. They should not try and go to bed at 10 p.m. It is far too early for them. It does not correlate with their circadian rhythm. And if they do, they are likely to lay in bed feeling anxious, feeling restless, experiencing bedtime resistance, and then they're going to sleep even worse than if they went to bed around 11 p.m., which is more aligned with their natural circadian pattern. And then for anyone who is a bear, who is an individual who likes to sleep and wake it in between the early and the later, so they like to usually rise about 7 and usually go to bed around 11 p.m. That's most people in the population. They are probably going to struggle to fall asleep at 10 p.m. So it's actually, I recommend they go to bed at 10:30. So that's just one simple example of why you need to know your chronotypes. But before I go too much further, I just realized I probably should explain what a chronotype is because it is a new concept in sleep psychology and in sleep science. So if you're listening to this and thinking bear, lion, wolf, I've got no idea. Chronotype is simply a classification system which reflects your circadian rhythm and essentially your natural preference to sleep and wake at an early, late, or mid time. If you have an early preference, that would be lions. Like myself, we like to rise and sleep the earliest, so rising around 6, going to bed around 10. If you are a wolf, you like to sleep and wake the latest, so you ideally like to go to bed around 12 or even 1 o'clock, then rise around 8 a.m. And if you are a bear, as mentioned before, you like to rise around 7 and sleep around 11. There is much, much more to chronotypes. For example, it does predict your personality traits. It predicts it's really interesting. It predicts your peak productivity times. It predicts what you should eat and at what amounts at particular times. It predicts what sleep sabotage you're most vulnerable for. For example, wolves are their personality tendencies, behavioral tendencies include addiction. So of all chronotypes, they are the most likely to have a smartphone addiction. So it could be a lot harder for them to simply switch off and get off a device because they have a neurological tendency to have addictive tendencies. So yeah, and they're also personality-wise, wolves are more open to risks, willing to take risks, and present-oriented. So again, those are like, they just want the rewards in the now, oh, it doesn't matter if I'm tired tomorrow, I just want to watch another episode, right? Whereas lions are particularly risk adverse and particularly health conscious and future oriented. So of all chronotypes, they find it the easiest to simply say, you know what, this isn't going to be worth it tomorrow. I want to get up. I've got a busy day. I've got lots to do. I'm not wanting to compromise my sleep because I know I'm going to feel bad in the morning. I don't like taking risks. I don't know how I'm going to feel in the morning. So that's very typical of a lion. So, these chronotypes predict certain personality types. That's why, personalities and sleep-wake patterns. And so relevant to know yours, to know which sleep strategies and timings are best for you. But in addition to that, it's also really helpful because it helps us understand ourselves better. So many of my clients are like, oh, that's why I haven't been able to go to bed at 10. It's just not in line with my my circadian rhythm, or, that's why I feel so exhausted in the morning, rather than thinking there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just your biology. But unless you know your biology, you can be sitting there beating yourself up that, why can't I get up like my partner who gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning and, full of energy, and I'm exhausted, so there must be something wrong with me. No. It's just, maybe you're just a wolf and doesn't align with circadian rhythm.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's interesting because I think there will be a lot of listeners who are contemplating the different chronotypes of their family, and we're talking about adults here at the moment because I know children have different sleep needs, and no doubt the chronotypes, they fall into their chronotype eventually, I suppose. But I think about in my home, Peter is a bear and I am a wolf. And so if we go to bed at night, he'll always turn out the light and go to sleep before I'll read for another hour before he does. But the thing is, my alarm still goes off at the same time in the morning. So I'm one of these people who struggles, like many, because I naturally want to stay up a little bit later, but I know when my alarm's going off and I know how important the sleep is. So I do go to bed at a decent time, and the reading helps enormously. So what's your advice to people who are in that same situation, which is probably most wolves are in a situation where they have to get up in the morning? I suppose, is that where naps come in?
So naps can definitely help, but what I'd recommend is, so in my book I share the specific strategies that I recommend for wolves, and I also recommend them in my online program, Sleep School. And what you'll find is, if you use the sleep strategies that are designed for your chronotype at the time for your chronotype, then you'll be able to fall asleep earlier and easier and wake up more refreshed. Now, I don't just want to, say, just obviously, that's all. I want to share a little bit of an example just to give you an idea. Like, one of the principles is blue light blocking glasses. That's one of the fastest and easiest ways to help you fall asleep faster and wake up less through the night. I was actually doing some research on it before this show, and there was a 2016 study featured in Chronobiology International that found individuals wearing blue light glasses for 2 hours before bed fell asleep 79% faster and spent half the amount of time awake through the night compared to a night that they didn't use the glasses. Now, I know they're actually huge, because the thing is that of all the reasons we can't sleep, stress or alcohol or devices, the number one thing to control your circadian rhythm, and therefore the number one thing that is going to help you sleep better, is to control light. And that means in the evening you need to block out blue light, which is the harmful spectrum of light emitted from devices, but also from ceiling lights and regular room lights. In order to
and
do
televisions.
this, yes, devices, televisions,
Yes.
laptops, all
Yes.
screens.
Yes.
So for example, blocking out blue light, that is my number one tip for anyone who wants a short, sharp tip and, just gets the point. Short, sharp tip, there you go. But ideally, you want to cater that to your chronotype. Wolves need 3 hours at least blocking out blue light in order to get the desired results, which means in order to facilitate an earlier than they would usually prefer bedtime. Lions, on the other hand, 2 hours is great for them. Bears, as always, they're in the middle. They are okay on 2.5 hours. But yeah, I think that this is really valuable for wolves and anyone who is struggling to switch off in the evening, to reflect on, to know that it could be your circadian preference, but B, there are ways to get around that and manage your innate preferences. And that's just one example, and I share heaps more in my book and heaps more on my online course as well. And for anyone who is thinking, well, how do I know what I am? I don't know if I'm a wolf, I'm a bear, I'm a lion, I'm a bird. I have a quiz on my website. It's super short, super fast, and I definitely recommend they take it, because it's going to give them an insight into what they are, and then I send out tips according to your chronotype. So that would be my best recommendation for anyone who is sitting here being, okay, well, how am I going to use this information? Go and find out your chronotype, and then I'll guide you on the next steps.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. I know it was fascinating when I did mine, and that insight takes the stress off, doesn't it? Because I think one of the things when we are going to sleep, if we're forcing ourselves to sleep or we're lying in bed willing ourselves, I should go to sleep, I know when I'm getting up, looking at the clock, 6 hours left, 5 hours left, it just makes falling asleep much more difficult. So I wonder if in leading up to the conclusion of our conversation today, I wonder if there are a handful of other tips that you can share with listeners, knowing that a lot of listeners do struggle with anxiety and or are parents of children who may be having trouble sleeping. What other advice can you share?
For sure. I would love to share my signature bedtime routine. This is a routine that 100% of my private clients have seen improvements in their sleep in less than 7 days. So I know it works. And I think on the note of children, know that a lot of these strategies can be used by children as well, and it's interesting because I also think that a lot of parents know, of course, kids need a bedtime routine to unwind them. We are exactly the same. So what the bedtime routine, step one is, of course, block out blue lights for the reasons I mentioned as well. And if anyone does want my recommendations for blue light glasses, I will share them in the show notes. It's on my website under Sleep Kit. Step two of the signature bedtime routine is to use lavender oil capsules, not just diffusing lavender, but actually taking lavender oil capsules has been found in clinical trials to reduce anxiety by 45%. And this study, which was a 2010 study featured in Phytomedicine, also tested an anxiety reduction by sleeping pills, pharmaceutical benzodiazepines, and they found that there was an anxiety reduction by 46%. So, quote unquote, the researchers said they were as effective as each other. Good old lavender oil capsules.
Good old lavender.
Yeah.
And are there instructions around the safety or any contraindications for any listeners who it may not be suitable for?
For sure. So, as with any supplement, speak to your pharmacist, speak to your doctor first. This is generalized advice, and it's not this is generalized advice. So especially if you are concerned, speak to your health practitioner and get the green light. But lavender oil capsules, they are available, simply over the counter. You don't need a prescription or anything at pharmacies. So they'll be able to guide you around the suitability or alternatives if they're needed as well.
Oh,
great question. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Step 3 of the signature bedtime routine is to have a good night phone alarm. Now, that's just an alarm that goes off 1 hour before bed, reminding you to disconnect from tech. Obviously, with blue light such a problem, you do not want to be on blue light in the hour before bed. Step 4 is to have a shower. So the drop in your core body temperature after emerging from a warm shower to a cooler bathroom is a cue for melatonin synthesis. Melatonin is that key sleepiness hormone to help you fall and stay asleep. Step 5 of the signature bedtime routine is to have a magnesium-based sleep supplement. This one's helpful for your anxious listeners as well. It's been found in clinical trials to reduce anxiety by 31%. However, note that this was over the course of 4 weeks, so it's not necessarily just going to happen overnight. Step 6 is to read. As you mentioned, reading is super soothing and can reduce stress by 68%, with the effect starting in just 6 minutes. And last step is to use an eye mask, because that blocks out that all-important blue light that may otherwise keep you up in the evening.
Oh, goodness me. I love that sleep routine. And as you're going through, I'm thinking, yes, no, yes, no, in terms of my own sleep and the things that you've suggested in relation to the reading. I don't shower immediately before bed, but I know that it's not helpful to have a room that's too warm. And the other thing I love is a magnesium oil. And I wanted to ask with regards to the magnesium supplementation, is that taken orally or the magnesium oils that you spray, which is what I use, which seems to be very effective for me, are they equally as effective as one another?
That's a good question. I feel like some studies would. I've read studies which say they are as effective as each other. I've read studies that have said that transdermal, as in through the skin, is more effective. I've read other studies that have said that orally is more effective. So yeah, it's because the thing is there's many variables, there's individual differences. It depends on the quality of magnesium, the type of magnesium. It depends on, in terms of transdermal absorption, it depends on where it's sprayed on the body. If it's on the feet, that has one of the highest absorption rates, so that's probably going to be more effective than if it's sprayed on your arms. So I think that one. So that one is speak to your health practitioner first to make sure that it's right for you, and then B, test and see. It's some people are going to find that they prefer and that they stick at the transdermal for longer. Some people are going to find that they prefer the oral route longer. And like I mentioned before, consistency is key. So if you prefer one to the other and you're going to keep it up, then choose that. Yeah.
Yes.
Great question.
Oh, Olivia, I wish we could talk for longer, but that really does bring us to the end of our time together today. But what I love about you and your work is that you share the science, you're across what's current, what's impactful, and you share really practical tips. And it is such a pillar of our health and our mental health. And I really do encourage those of you listening to try Olivia's sleep routine, and that the signature sleep routine is available via your website. And where else, so please direct people to your website, and where else people can get in contact with you and learn more about you and your work and how to work with you.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate you. The signature bedtime routine is a downloadable ebook on my website. Literally, don't worry about writing down all those steps. There's a lot of steps, but they don't take too long anyway. But it's downloadable on my website. I send it out to you, so that's no stress. The chronotype quiz on my website. I'll leave the exact spelling in the show notes, because it's oliviaarezzolo.com.au, which is a bit of a mouthful to spell out. There was also information there on my private coaching, on my online program, Sleep School, on my book. My email contact is there as well, my Instagram. All the details are there. If you type in Sleep Expert into Instagram, I come up. But my website's a great portal of information, which is going to be really helpful. And, if nothing else, you'll get to know your chronotype, and you'll get the signature bedtime routine sent to you directly. So that's a win.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. So, look, thank you, Olivia, very much for your time, for sharing your expertise with us. And I really do appreciate you and what you've shared, and the difference that this conversation will make for our listeners to this episode. So thanks again for your time. I really, really have enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. Likewise. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr Jodi Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.